Um, Really enjoyed it too, by the way. I don't think I've said that to you yet. Was a lot of
Oh, that's nice.
I think I've
Thanks.
I think I've read all your books, but I have not read, I have to be honest, I haven't read The Housemate yet, which I want to. It's on the
Oh, that's
pile.
okay, Ben. It's not like you don't have anything else to do.
But I just, it was so much fun to go back to Gemma again. I haven't seen her for a bit.
Yeah, I kind of felt like that writing it, I think, actually. So, yeah, it's nice if people felt like that reading it. But
Yeah.
yeah, it was a bit like that.
Yeah, cool. It comes across that way. Um, for people coming in, hello, welcome to Ben's Book Club. You can see everybody in the chat is already very aware of exactly the procedure. What we do, we come in, we say hi to everyone, and we say where we're from. If you are not worried about spy satellites finding and tracking where you are. Uh,
I know the next book I'm writing's got lots of technology in it, so
oh, cool.
I'm maybe a bit more cautious than I used to be now that I'm doing
Yeah,
all this
yeah.
research.
You like block the camera, like.
Yeah, yeah, no, I'm not going to come and stalk anybody. Don't worry.
Okay, cool. Well, I don't know whether you can see the chat, but you can see just everyone
Hmm.
from everywhere, all around Australia. Hello from
Yeah, it's
Gold
great.
Coast, Barara Heights. Oh, I said that so badly. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Bruce. I tried to pronounce some names. North Brizzy.
Rainbow Bay. Rainbow Bay sounds nice.
Oh, doesn't it sound nice?
It's
Brisbane's
a good
actually
name for a
been,
book.
we've been super hot recently as well. I think my mum and dad in Victoria have been saying it's been super windy down there, Sarah, because you're from Melbourne, right?
Yeah, it was absolutely crazy winds on Sunday night and into Monday.
Hmm.
To the point where I did have a moment where I kind of thought maybe this house isn't structurally designed to
Mm,
stand up in this type of weather. So luckily I'm still here, but yeah, it was quite eerie. It's pretty
yeah.
intense winds. Yeah.
I remember going camping as a kid once and dad put the tent out without the pegs down and then a gust of wind
Oh yeah.
and it just bounced across the landscape. It was great.
Oh dear. Yeah. Fun, but also terrifying.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, a little bit. I wasn't in the tent at the time.
Well, that's lucky.
Oh, we've got a few people from the UK tuning in as well. Hello, Ian, as always. Ian is our friendly moderator on Facebook group, the Ben's Book Club.
Oh,
Yeah, we've got a cool Facebook
nice.
group. Ian really takes care of everybody over there. So thank you, Ian. Good to see you. Ruth from Canterbury. That's awesome. Sunshine Coast, Harvey Bay. Jeez.
It's really representative, isn't it? It's
Yeah,
great.
cool. Well, it's a
Love
thing
it.
I think it's a thing I think I really like about doing this book club is that we get to all come together as a community, but it's one that's so diverse and there's so many people from all different regional parts of
Yeah.
Australia and big cities. It's really cool because I think sometimes I don't know what your experience is like, Sarah, but actual author events in regional towns can be, well, because there's just fewer people. It's just there's
Yeah,
less opportunities to go there. I don't know
that's
how you
right.
do it.
Yeah, I mean, I've been to a couple of regional libraries in the last time that I went around talking about books, but yeah, I definitely hadn't done any of that prior to the pandemic, and I'm hoping that more of the publishers kind of see the value in it. But yeah, it's obviously just logistically more difficult. So it's nice
Yeah.
to be able to do something like this and get people from all over together. It's great.
Yeah, it's cool. We have started to do Ben's Book Club live events too, but so far just in Brisbane. So if
Yeah,
anyone's
no, yeah,
listening and wants
nice.
to fly me somewhere to do a live Ben's Book Club, very happy to do so.
Yeah, it's a great idea.
Let me introduce Sarah. We haven't actually introduced Sarah. She is the star of the show, and we are going to be here to discuss Body of Lies, which is a wonderful, wonderful book. I really enjoyed reading. I've been a fan of Sarah's for a long time. Uh, and let me read your bio. Sarah Bailey, Melbourne-based writer, advertising and communications background. She has three sons, which is a remarkable feat unto itself, and is also currently the managing director of the Melbourne and Sydney offices of an advertising agency. So, Sarah, I don't know how you do all the things that you do each day, and then you're still making time for us, at night. So, thank you for that.
Oh,
Um,
you're welcome.
And then we've got the Gemma Woodstock series, which your first book, The Dark Lake, was published in 2017. and it won the Ned Kelly Award for Best First Fiction and the David Award for Best Debut. And then you had Into the Night and Where the Dead Go, and then Body of Lies is the fourth in the series. And you've also got The
Mm.
Housemate and an Audible original. And you just, oh, man, you're just smashing writing, and your books are so fun and thrilling. And I loved going back to Gemma. Everyone welcome Sarah.
Oh, thanks. That's so nice, Ben. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you and I are old friends, you know. Our first books came out the same exact day, right?
Yeah, that's right.
From Jump. Yeah.
All
So
those years ago, I remember. Yeah.
we were both very yeah, do you remember going to those first events and having your first festival and
Yeah.
getting asked your
No
first
idea.
question?
Yeah, had no idea what was going on, but it's always been pretty fun actually. But yeah, I definitely, when I look back, I do realize how little I knew, which you know what, maybe was a good thing.
Yeah, yeah, because the more you know, the more yeah, the more things you have to.
Overthink it, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. All right, so I have a question for you, and I don't, can I ask you guys this? I actually don't know this. How does Zoom work? If I show you this, is it around the right way?
Mhm.
Yeah, cool. Because to me it looks mirrored. You know how they do that awkward thing?
Yeah.
Look at
Yeah.
this quote up here. All right. Mark Brandy, who again I think came out the same time as us with Wimmera, right? In 2017.
Yeah. Yeah. That's right.
Mark Brandy has said her best yet. Sarah, do you agree? Is this your best book yet? What do you think?
Oh, that's a really tricky question, Ben, to start off. I don't know. I think I don't know if it is my best book. I always get asked if it's my what my favorite book is.
Hmm.
And my answer to that tends to be that The Dark Lake, I think, will always have to be sort of my favorite, just because I guess it was the book that kicked it all off.
Yeah.
And I've got a soft spot for it because it's the book that, introduced Gemma to me and
Hmm.
um, I guess taught me that I could actually finish a book. So it's quite a sentimental book, obviously, for me. In terms of best, though, I don't know. I mean, I think when you write a series, it's a bit difficult too because the fourth book, for example, can't exist without the first three. So
Yeah.
they're sort of like linked in a way that makes it difficult to choose the best. Um, I know that the third book in the series, Where the Dead Go, was the one that I rewrote the most. And so I
Okay.
always feel like I got lots of feedback on that book from my publisher. And I guess I always look at that book and feel satisfied because I worked so hard at fixing it. And it sort
Oh,
of
okay.
was like the nemesis book for me, the challenge book. Um, and then The Housemate, it's currently a standalone. It may not stay being a standalone, but
Ooh.
it's always been, I guess, it was good to be able to try something new. And I felt perhaps like that was quite a complicated plot, new characters, third person. So that also felt a bit more experimental for me. So I don't know. I'm not answering your question very well, but
It's okay. It's a weird one.
I don't know if this most recent one is my best, but I'm just bloody glad I got it written.
Yeah, okay.
Feel
I
relieved.
got,
Feel
I
relieved
got
that it's done.
Yeah, no, I understand. I understand that relief for sure. And it's almost relieving and to see it in cover and it's done. You can put it to bed a
Yeah,
little bit. Yeah.
such a relief. Yeah.
You might see guys in the chat, just everyone who's attending. We've actually got a huge turnout tonight for you, Sarah, which is awesome. Um,
Oh, so
but what
nice.
we do is that we ask Sarah questions. I'm really just a placeholder here for you guys, but this is an opportunity to talk to Sarah and to, yeah, if you have any questions, if you have anything you'd love to talk about with the book, we can get Sarah's direct answers, which is pretty fun. Um, Michael asks if anyone has read a Mark Brandy book. I sure have. Have you, Sarah?
I have.
Yeah.
Yep. I think I've read all of his books.
Uh,
Full disclosure, we are friends now. So, I do sort of, not, I don't feel obligated, but I'm very happy to read all of Mark's books.
yeah.
Um, I did say to him once that his books are very sad and he needs to write a happy book. And he said, I can never do that. Stop being ridiculous.
Yeah, they're fun, thrilling books most of the time, but they are tinged with tragedy, I think for sure.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
just style. I don't know whether you can see, Sarah, how many people are saying this is my first Sarah Bailey, loved it. Oh, I want to Where the Dead Go, just finished it, loved it. Oh, this is awesome,
Oh, so
guys.
nice.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone. I know I've seen that there's a question someone asked about is this planned to be the last Gemma book? And yes, the answer is that I think this is definitely the last Gemma book. I
Mm,
did sort of say that after the third one, and then I wrote a fourth. So I guess you never,
you never
I
know.
might be like, John Farnham or something and keep popping back. But I think she's done in this fourth book. I sort of feel like it's left her in the right place for me.
Mm,
And I have this thought about maybe she pops up as a cameo in a future story that's someone else's story, and she's just kind of there so that you know that she's just, doing whatever she's doing in her life.
yeah, yeah.
But yeah, I think the fact that this book kind of came full circle from the first one felt good for me in terms of kind of ending the series. So yeah,
Yeah. I think, and not to spoil too much yet, we will get into questions about the ending, but um, towards the end of the book, she does feel very, I would say, very complete now, Gemma.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's sort of, it's like I always sort of used to have these conversations with my editor because Gemma, for those who have read one of the books in the series so far, she's quite tricky and,
Mm.
a bit difficult and a bit impulsive. And a lot of people find her quite irritating. Some people really like her. I feel both of those things at the same time.
Yeah, yeah.
But I do think she grows through the series. Like, I mean, she also ages 10 years from the first book to the fourth. So, she does grow
Hmm.
up, I guess, to some extent. But I think she matures without sort of changing her personality. So she still has her
Yeah.
Gemma-isms,
Yeah.
but she does sort of learn a little bit from, past behavior and mature a little bit as well. So,
Yeah, she
yeah,
seems to have a little bit more, yeah, a little bit more control over how she chooses things. Whereas before
I
she
think
felt a
so.
little bit more impetuous. And I remember reading, I think it was Into the Night, where she goes to Melbourne and then leaves her son. And I was like, no, Gemma, come on, man. What are you doing? You
Yeah.
love your kid. Oh, anyway, I still remember
Yeah.
reading.
Yeah,
Um,
it's yeah, she's a funny one. Like I often think it's quite interesting. I when the book came out in the States, I got a lot of emails in the first couple of weeks from people in America that seemed to really find her quite grating.
mm,
And that was interesting. It was like they were a bit allergic to her personality and some of the things that she did, which, I totally get that, but they really wanted to tell me. So that was interesting. I think now it's a bit different because if people read all four books, they kind of like her enough.
yeah,
So I tend to find like I'm not getting as many people being sort of really negative towards Gemma because if they really hated the first book, they just stop reading. That's fine.
yeah.
But I tend to get more feedback now, like, oh, I love her, even though she drives me crazy. And I think that's a pretty fair assessment, really.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I think, and I love you. I love that part of her too, is that she has flaws. We see her
Yeah,
flaws, but she feels very human. She feels very real for the flaws. She doesn't feel like a superhero who's able to solve every crime and all that sort of stuff. Like she sounds or feels like she makes wrong decisions, which is, I think, really
yeah.
powerful. I think it makes it feel more human. And then obviously, when things happen to her, you feel that a little bit more
Just
keenly.
moving my cat. Sorry. Sorry, I've got a cat that doesn't like when I'm on online calls, and I don't know, she feels left out or something, but she wants to be on
He,
the desk. So if you see me removing the cat, that is what's happening.
he's very welcome to join our chat, your cat. What's your cat's name?
Tabby.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
That's pretty
she's
cool.
I
Yeah,
don't know,
pretty
she's being
cool
she's
name.
being difficult. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, and
Uh,
speaking, I don't know whether this is a great segue or not, but speaking of difficult, you've had a newborn son while you've been working on this book.
I
Um,
have,
and
yes.
all I mean by difficult, because as much of a joy that children are, absolutely, obviously that's a huge time thing, and you get, with the lack of sleep and all that stuff. How was it writing with a newborn?
Well, I've actually got a funny little story about this because I actually started this book in 2021. And so because I live in Melbourne, that was in the middle of the second lockdown.
Yeah.
And I wrote about 25,000 words of this book initially this story wasn't going to be a Gemma book because I thought I was done with Gemma. And then I came up with the premise of a corpse being stolen from a hospital after an accident.
Mm.
And then, why would someone want to steal a corpse? Who was the corpse? What's going on? All that sort of stuff. And I started playing around with the story and the premise, and Gemma just kind of kept being there.
Yeah.
And it did feel like a kind of more realistic country hospital kind of story. And then I just thought I
Yeah.
may as well just set it in Smithson. And, she's already there from the last book. So that's convenient. And so yeah, that's kind of how it came about.
Yeah.
But the thing that's really funny is that in 2021, when I started writing this book, I had no idea that I would have another baby ever.
Mm.
And in the story, Gemma has a baby.
Yeah.
And so I was writing this story, da 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 da. Gemma's got this little baby. And because Gemma is Gemma and she doesn't like to be told no, she basically walks around with a baby strapped to her chest as she's trying to solve crimes and be a detective. And then sort of fast forward, 2 years, I decided that I did want to finish this book. The publisher was happy for a fourth book in the Gemma series to be written. And then I was both pregnant, madly finalizing the draft of the book,
Mm.
and then editing the book with a baby strapped to me while I was typing around it. And
Wow.
I don't know, it was like life imitated art, but at the same time, I hadn't finished the book. So I think it felt like it was kind of the other way around. And people were like, oh, did you make her have a baby because you were having a baby? And I'm like, no. So it was pretty strange because like I said, I didn't have, any sort of idea I'd have another child. And when I went back and was editing the book with a baby, I was like, oh, good, this does all feel quite real and true. I was remembering correctly. So yeah, it was a really weird, it felt quite meta a little bit some days, but
Yeah.
it definitely, I mean, look, I stopped working full time for a year. So in some ways I had more time than I've had for a really, really long time.
Mhm.
But babies take up, different kinds of time. So I was kind of more tired. Um, I don't know. It was just a different kind of juggle. And now I'm back at work, and that felt like it was a luxury holiday. So I think whatever you're doing at the time feels busy.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it, actually. I think that's really good.
Yeah.
Um, we've got some questions from the chat. I'd love to read a couple to
Yeah.
you. We have one
Sure.
from Emma. Do you have experience in policing or know people who work in that field? I felt like you really nailed the reality of policing personalities. So yeah, how do you do research as far as the policing goes? Because that's a tricky
Oh,
thing.
that's so nice. Yeah, it's really nice. No, I have zero experience myself, and I unfortunately have no one helpful in my family. They're not helpful really in any regard regarding my writing. Like they don't have any kind of careers that so
Yeah.
far have been particularly useful. My mother is a nurse and used to manage a hospital, so she was a little bit helpful in that kind of whole working out how a body might get stolen, which surprisingly is quite feasible apparently.
Oh,
Which is concerning. Yeah,
yeah.
but policing, no, not so much. But I have made a couple of friends that I sort of sense check things with. And also, I think in terms of the character part, I do now try to really observe cops when they're out and about together. I've gone and sat in a few court cases and then just hung around outside and listened to the cops
Mm.
talking to each other. And I mean, they're not giving away any, private information, confidential information. But I do think you pick up quite a lot about dynamics. I do a little bit of research into the rankings of the police force and how you get promoted and things like that, which also I think gives you quite a lot of clues around how that hierarchy works.
Mm.
And then I think also modern workplaces, they're all similar-ish. I think the dynamics between people, irrespective of the workplace, they're not worlds apart.
Yeah.
So a lot of it's character driven as opposed to vocation driven.
Mm.
So yeah, it's part research, it's part fact checking, it's part observational, it's part gut, it's part psychology, and then I have a couple of people that I run things past to make sure that it's all feasible.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a pretty important step because you will, I mean, people are so smart with their
Mm,
reading, even the way they watch, police procedurals now. They'll pick up stuff,
totally.
I'll say very quickly.
Yeah, they are. They're super, super experienced. I've seen someone's got a question about
Yeah.
the narrator as well, which I get asked this a lot actually. So I don't know if this is the same with you, Ben, but if my books have ever been turned into audiobooks, I do get sent a couple of voice files, but normally it's only like a very short list, like two,
Two or three.
maybe three people.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the same with
So
me.
you get to choose, yeah, but only from a very short list. And it's funny, I've never listened to my books on audio, so I don't actually know what they sound like. I just
What, not even
something
a
about
little
it.
bit? Wow.
No, not even a little bit. Maybe I don't know if that maybe makes me sound really lazy. Um,
No,
but
we've,
I did
we've
get a
got a
quite I
surprise for
got
you tonight, Sarah. Here we go. We're gonna play.
I,
Sorry.
I got quite a lot of feedback though. Uh, they changed. I know they changed the narrator for the third book in the Gemma series, and a lot of people reached out to me on social media and just sort of said, "Oh, they've changed it." They didn't really say if they thought it was good or bad, but they were sort of just
Oh,
telling me.
okay, I'm noticing it.
And I knew because the first narrator had been, I don't know, unwell or was working on something else. Um, and then when the housemate got published, which is the standalone novel, I got so many people saying how much they loved that narrator,
Okay.
which was really interesting. Like just a really overwhelming, like probably I don't know, 15 messages in one day. People were just,
Wow.
oh my gosh, we love her so much. So they ended up making her the narrator for the fourth Gemma book, which
Interesting.
does mean there's been three Gemmas, which is a bit weird, but people seem to love her voice, so I think it works. Yeah,
Okay. Well, yeah,
yeah.
we have a lot of people who do listen to the audiobook, and I saw, Judy, that you're
Mm.
going to listen to it soon. So that's pretty cool. Yeah, it seems to be a lot of fans of the audiobook. We have a question from Gemma George Itzis. Sorry if I'm pronouncing your last name wrong, Gemma, but Gemma's been really mad at you the whole week on the Facebook group. She's just constantly posting. I think it's like 15 posts. Why did she misspell Gemma? Why is there a G and
Oh
not
no.
a J? Because her name's
Well, I guess it's because she's not. I don't know if this Gemma is short for like Jemima or something like that, but this Gemma is just purely Gemma.
okay.
Um, so more like the gemstone Gemma. So that I
Okay.
don't know. That's
That's
just how her
okay.
name's spelled.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
and I think I've said this to Ben before actually, but she appeared in my mind as a character and with her name, just absolutely as it was. So I didn't even have a moment to sort of think about her, brainstorm her, try to go, oh, I wonder what I'm going to call her. It was like she just sort of was like, here I am, and my name's Gemma Woodstock, and that's that.
Yeah.
And I know I saw someone else say something about that they think that I look like how they
Yeah,
imagine Gemma
Gemma.
to look, and that is definitely not how I think Gemma looks. She's definitely not doesn't look like me
That's
in my
funny though.
mind. Yeah, she's more dark haired and much more small than me and all that sort of stuff. But like she can look like whatever you wanted to look like. So
Yeah.
that's fine.
All right. So there you go, Gemma. And I have to be honest, she only posted one comment and she was very nice about it. But she's like, oh, I wish it was because it's her name as well, obviously.
Oh,
Um,
yeah. Cute.
Sorry, I'm just scrolling through your questions, guys. This is awesome. I love to see so many positive questions. I also love to read too about so many cat sympathy comments as well, that
No.
everyone's got cats who do similar things.
I know
Um,
Tabby will be thrilled at her new celebrity status.
yep,
I'll
yep.
tell her.
Um, yeah, sorry, and Gemma's saying she feels like a minority in the Gemma/Gemma world.
Yeah,
Shame,
it's true.
Gemma. Well, we love you, Gemma. Maybe Sarah can throw a different. No, no, that'll confuse people now. I don't think you can do it.
I have to do it in a different fictional world. I guess I could maybe
Yeah,
put
but
with a
imagine
J somewhere else.
imagine you had a new book and there was a character in there named Gemma with a J. Wouldn't people go, "Why not Gemma with a
Yeah,
G?" And that would be a whole thing.
probably.
Yeah.
Probably, yes. It is funny though, character names are funny. I don't know if you get this, Ben, but sometimes I'll finish a draft of my book and I mean I really like names. Like I've got my kids have
Yeah.
unusual names. I'm obviously just called Sarah, which is fairly straightforward, but I really like unusual names. And so sometimes with my characters I'm aware that they're not all odd names, but sometimes they're a little bit more unusual. And I'll kind of finish a draft, and then my editor will make comments around, oh, you've got to change this person's name because it's too similar to this character.
Yeah.
And I'll go, oh, what? No, it's not. And it's sort of like when you're writing a draft, you can't see it. I can't sort of see that there's similarities in names or that there's too many people with names starting with K or something. It's
Mm.
like you're riding so kind of in the tunnel of the world that you're in that you don't, I just always think they seem really distinctive. And then my editor's like, no, you can't have a George and a and a Gemma in the same kind of relationship. It's too confusing. Or you've got a Dave and a Dean. It's too close. And I'm like, oh, in my mind they're just separate people.
That's
So
interesting.
it's funny, you do often get feedback on names. Yeah.
I always find too that when you're writing, when I get to the end of a draft, there will be probably half of the characters just feel set in stone. That is definitely who they are. That's their name. And it just
Yep.
was always from the jump. It's just like, that's them, no changing it. But there are some when I
Yep.
read back, I'm like, that is not who you are yet. And I have to
Yep.
play with the name a little bit. Do you find the same thing?
Yep, definitely. Yes, I don't know why it is, but there's some that are sort of like I think if someone asked me to change the name, I'd struggle because I'd sort of think, no, no,
That's the
that's
name.
who they are. They're untouchable, that's locked in. And then there's others that I'm like, oh yeah, I don't feel particularly tied to that. I'm happy to change that. And I mean, I even in one of my books changed the gender of a character completely and sort of changed the character essentially. Like I needed to for a whole bunch of reasons, and that was a bit strange. Like having to sort of take a whole character out and replace them with this new person, new personality. I
Oh,
think
that's
it was definitely the right decision, but even now sometimes I think, oh yeah, that's right, I did do that. Yes, that whole person never got, no one ever got to read that person. It's quite funny with edits because you sort of there is a couple of versions of the book before the book is the book, but
yeah.
only you and maybe three other people know that. So it's quite strange.
I had I wrote a book, my second book. Oh, sorry, we talked about my book, Snake Island, but there was
Yep.
I named a town after a place near where I was from, which was Port
Mm-hmm.
Albert. And I had to go through and just change a few town names. So I was changing it to Port Napier, and I did a find replace name, but I'd forgotten one of my main characters was also called Albert at the time. So then he became
Oh,
Napier, and it was really odd, and it mucked me up for
uh,
I had to scroll
yeah,
through.
that's annoying. That's that is a yes, that's an unfortunate outcome of modern technology,
I,
saving you time, but not really.
yeah, I still have
That's funny.
I still have nightmares like
Yeah,
finding that I didn't change, I missed one. You know what I mean?
yeah, you missed
Um,
one. I know. It's
I have that
confusing.
pain. There's a great question here from Recovery Station Treatment Zoom Room One. Sorry, I'm just
Love it.
it's a long name. It's really
I love
interesting.
it.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
Um, but the question is about do you plan the whole story out first or does it develop as you write? But I wanted to talk about that question, but also
Mhm.
you sort of outlined your writing process for this book. Correct me if I'm wrong, on the Words and Nerds podcast on a series of you were sort of
I have.
yeah. So
Yeah.
into that
It kept
question, but
me
also
accountable.
yeah, can you talk about that podcast as well and what it was like to document your own creative process?
Yeah, I don't know if everyone knows, but Danny V runs this amazing podcast called Words and Nerds, and I think Ben's actually been involved in some spin-off series under
I
that
was yeah,
umbrella.
wow, yeah.
Um, yeah, and it's great. And Danny's a big champion of Australian authors. And we were chatting one day, and I sort of said, "Oh, like I think I'm so interested in the way other people write. It would be really interesting to kind of almost be tracking a book as it's in development and sort of what that process is." And then she was like, well, we should document it. We could do like diaries of your book. And I thought that's a fantastic idea because I will then have to do it. So it's a great
Yeah.
way of keeping me accountable and having to sort of almost like do a bit of a check-in publicly every month. So we probably had about 6 episodes where I talked about where I was at in the story, what was happening, what I was planning on doing the following month, what had been difficult, what had been easy, all that kind of
Yeah,
stuff.
that's so cool.
So you can look that up and listen to it. But in terms of the question, I am still not very good at planning things out. I I mean, I kind of have a theory. I know there's lots of talk in the writing world about being a plotter or a pantser. So you either, diligently plot things out, like people like Jane Harper, I know, is amazing at that, and Dervla McTiernan, and people that are very organized.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, I'm really organized in every other part of my life, and I'm a big planner in that part of my world. But when it comes to writing books, I just cannot seem to think that far ahead and think that intricately kind of
Yeah.
on maths. So I do think I do plan. I think to some extent everyone plans, but you just do a lot of it in your head.
Yep.
And then I think a lot of people then plan as they write, and that's just their way of plotting out their book, sort of in real time. Um, and I mean, who cares, I guess, if you get there in the end?
Yeah.
Although,
Yeah.
like, sometimes I really wish that I could sit down every day and have a nice plan that I'd written out that I could then just type to, as opposed to just hoping for the best. Um, but yeah, I have a premise. That's definitely how it starts with me. I really get a hook of a book in my head that I feel like won't leave me alone. It almost becomes a joke about, like, I don't have intrusive thoughts, but I have intrusive ideas, and they just interrupt me all the time. And I find myself kind of playing around with the premise, thinking about it, adding little bits to it, getting excited about, oh yeah, and then this could happen. Oh yeah, and then this could happen.
Hmm.
But I really very rarely write stuff down, because it's like the magic disappears when I try to write it down,
Yeah.
and sort of synopsises and stuff. I just cannot seem to almost have the patience to do it. The only thing that seems to work for me is to sit down and start typing. And then as I'm typing, it feels like momentum builds as I'm typing, and then I start to almost not be able to keep up with my thoughts and what's going to happen next. But the only thing that I do that's perhaps a little bit strange as well is I jump around a bit. So if I sort of write the first three chapters and then I get a little bit like stuck in terms of, I'm like, oh, don't exactly quite know what happens next, but I know what happens in like six chapters. I'll just start writing what happens in six chapters, and I end up with almost like a patchwork book, and I sort of
Mm.
stitch it all together, which is not great because I just use Microsoft Word. So it's a lot of scrolling and like copying and pasting and moving stuff around and
Yeah.
moving. It's a nightmare actually. But
Still use
yeah,
Microsoft Word, huh?
yeah, I know I should use Scrivener or something fancier, and I don't
Just
know.
like,
Again, I just kind of can't. Yeah.
yeah, do your thing.
But
Yeah.
I
Whatever
don't know if
works.
it's the same for you, Ben, though. Like, I think you get to a point where you do sort of accept that the way that you write is probably just like the way it's always going to be,
Yeah.
and you don't fight it so much.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you that question actually, like how your creative process has changed since Dark Lake to now. But it feels like maybe you've just come to a decision to accept that that is your process and that it's okay to have
Yeah,
a different process or something.
yeah, I think so. I don't really think it's changed that much. Um, I mean, I've seen someone has asked a question about, do I have another career? And so my other career, and I'm in the 23rd year, I think, of working in advertising, and I run an agency, and I'm not in a creative role. So my role in the agency is management and strategy and commercial responsibilities, client engagement, staff management, all that type of thing. I do work with the creative teams, give feedback, all that sort of thing. But I think that industry has been helpful for me in terms of writing, because there's lots of deadlines, there's lots of having to articulate thoughts, having to sort of be quite concise about feedback, having to take feedback on board and really quickly process it and get over it and then address it.
That's
And
important.
that is quite helpful, obviously, with feedback when it comes to publishing. So I think it was an accidentally good training ground for something that I didn't really know that I would necessarily ever do. But yeah, I think I still kind of write the same way. It's still just I sit down, I type,
Yeah.
I sort of think as I go, I edit as I go, I try to leave myself on a little bit of a hook so that when I come back the
With
following
the start,
day,
yeah.
week, whenever it happens to be, I pick it up and I'm, kind of go, oh yeah, I'm still kind of excited about what I know is going to happen. I still delete big chunks of books because it's not quite right. And I've realized that I've, you know, started the chapter in the wrong spot, or I've gone into way too much detail about something that's boring and all that sort of stuff. But I think because I don't plot, that's just the reality of how it's going to have to be. I'm going to
Yeah.
have to sort of do it as I go and then fix it as I go. And
Yeah.
then that's just how it is, I think.
You're right. Um,
Yeah.
on your question before, the only thing that's changed for me is I have migrated from Microsoft Word to Scrivener, and it's
Yeah.
only
Smart.
yeah, it's well, I just got it to a point where I've got it's such a tool, and now I've got it where I'm really
Yeah.
happy with it. So on the left-hand side, I've got just dot point scenes, and it's just a little line of scene, but I can see the
Oh,
whole,
that's cool.
yeah, I can see the whole thing
Yeah.
at a glance rather
Yeah.
than scrolling through trying to find different things. Wasn't he wearing
Yeah.
a cap in chapter five? Like I can just click the chapters.
I
Um,
think I do need to really at some point embrace it because what I tend to do is I don't know, maybe halfway through a draft ish, and then I almost have to go, okay, what have I written here? Like what is actually going on?
yeah,
And sometimes at that point I will get out a big post-it note and kind of write out the dot point scenes that have happened so far.
yeah.
And
So
then
you
I'll
have to
write
do that.
all the other ones. Yeah, I'll kind of write down like all the other ones that I kind of know I need to do at some point. And I often tend to know what the ending is. By the time I'm about halfway through, I kind of know what the last chapter is, but
Yeah,
it's not normally the big dramatic chapter. It's almost like the just
the
the
emotion.
final bit of the book. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So I don't know. It's really weird, but I don't know. Just one of those things. Like who knows why you do anything a certain way. It's the
Yeah,
same at work. I watch different people do presentations, and some people just like to have the title slide and then they always put the ending slide in, and it's like they can't do the presentation until they've got the bookends, and then they're like, right. And then other people, you know what I mean? Like people are just funny
yeah,
how they've got their little kind of rituals. So
yeah.
I think, yeah, quirks, I guess.
Yeah, and I think we live in a time where there's so much prescription of the right way to do a thing.
Yeah.
Because I'm a high school teacher, it's the same with the lesson. This is the exact
Yeah.
format, etc. But you might not be that sort of teacher. You might be more of a personal,
Mm.
engaged sort of teacher rather than a structural. And there's lots of different things. Um,
Yeah.
I don't know
Totally.
whether you saw this question from Mandy, which I think is pretty funny. But Sarah, when do you sleep?
Well, no, I actually do. I used to be a terrible insomniac, and so I did used to write really late into the night, quite a lot, and that was great because especially even during the pandemic, particularly, it was quite good because I'd sort of finish work at sort of 6, have dinner, and then I would sometimes like write, until 12 or 1 o'clock in the morning, and it
Whoa,
was fine. Um, and then now I think that the baby has ruined that, and it's good. He's cured my insomnia,
that's
but
nice.
he's also meant that I am just very tired. And so now I just sleep whenever I get the
Mm.
opportunity. So yeah, I sleep quite a lot at the moment, which is not great for writing, actually.
What do you mean? Why is that? Wouldn't it be better to have a lot of rest and be your full best self when you come to face the page, or do you need to be a bit of a zombie
Yeah.
past your own idea?
Well, I think it's just more that I don't have physically do not have hours in the day left. So if
Oh,
I sleep
I get you.
lots and then I work lots and then the kids and then whatever else I'm doing, and then I'm like, oh, there's literally like 1 hour a week left, and I'm like, oh, shame.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, I need to do a couple of big weekend sessions or late night sessions over the next few months for sure. Yes.
There's a question from Liz about titles. You do have phenomenal titles. Body of Lies in particular, where do you come up with your titles? Where do they land? Are they different each time? Does your agent tell you
Yeah.
change them,
Yeah, no, they've all been, so it's been a bit of a different situation for all of them. So the Dark Lake was originally called, I think it was like Undertow or something. That was my terrible working title. And then the lovely people at Allen and Unwin were like, that's really bad, but the Dark Lake is great, so we're going to call it that. And I
Mhm.
said, that sounds amazing. So they named the second one. And sorry, the first one, and then the second one was actually, it was going to be called City of Stars because it's got a bit of a celebrity
Yep.
um, theme to it. And then I think two things happened. Someone in the sales team didn't like it. And then also there was another book that same year that they found out was due to be published that had the same name.
All right.
So they ditched that and that got called Into the Night. There was like a little short list that we all made and sent it around. And I can't remember who chose it, but that was, I was happy with that. That was fine. And then my publisher, Jane Pelfreman, who Ben also knows, she named the third book. It
Oh,
did not have a title. It was titleless. I just called it book three. I said to her, I just don't know what it's called. And there's a line in that book that talks about where the dead go. And she said, I think that could be a really good title. So
yeah,
let's
it's a good
call it
title.
that, which is pretty cool.
He's
And
clever.
then, yeah, and then I'm very excited because Body of Lies was my name. And I
Nice. Got one in.
got one in and I sent it in and I sort of, no one said anything for ages. And then I'd already had feedback on the draft. And I think in one of the emails I said, oh, and just also just wondering like what's everyone's thoughts on the title that I've put, like that I had as a draft title. Is it Vine? And they were like, yeah, we're really happy with it. I was like, oh my God.
It
How
finally
exciting.
happens.
Yeah. And the housemate were, I think there was, I had a couple of different suggestions for that, but I did also have the housemate as a suggestion. There was like chats around should it be called Three Housemates or some, I can't
Right.
remember, there was another version of it. Anyway, so the housemate was just where that landed, which I think was good as well. So it's a bit like, I think it's probably a little bit like kids' names where even when there's been other options, by the time someone just names it and it's on the title, you sort of forget that, and that's just what it's called.
They become the name.
And yeah, it becomes its name. But it's quite collaborative. I don't know what your experience has been like, but yeah,
I
bit
haven't,
of
I
everything.
haven't, I haven't named one yet.
There you go. Right.
Well,
Yeah.
no, I did to become a whale. I named that one actually. Damn, that was
Oh,
my
cool.
first one.
That's good.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
nice, nice.
And since then, it's
Yeah,
just
I think.
downward slope.
Yeah, well, I think I guess the question behind, I think I can't remember who asked the question, but the question behind the question a little bit is Liz, sorry. I think the publishers do have quite a lot of an opinion on the title,
Yeah.
and the sales team, the publisher, I think they all, feel like the name's very important. So if they don't like the name you've come up with, they will definitely tell you and they will suggest something else because they see it as very important for how they position the book. So
And they're
yeah,
very
I think
smart at their jobs. I mean,
I think so.
they're in the business of selling your book for you and getting as many people to read it, and they're going to choose the
That's
best
right.
title. So you sort of have to trust
Yeah,
them, right?
I very much trust them. I've had a couple of friends that have get a bit defensive about titles and covers and things. And I don't know, I tend to think, obviously, if you really dislike something, then you should say. But I think generally speaking, I think they know what they're doing and they want the best for your book. So yeah,
Mm.
good
Yeah,
decisions normally.
I agree. The death of John Lacey was originally just called Lacey, and it was my agent who said, "Oh, that sounds like a romance, petticoat doily sort of Lacey thing. It doesn't
Yeah, I can see
say
that.
bushranger." And so the first chapter was called "The Death of John Lacey," and they're like, "Aha, that's the one." Um,
Yeah, that's a great name. I think that works really well.
Yeah, I think it suited that book for sure. I had a
Yeah.
question. We've got more from the chat. Guys, I haven't had a chance really to talk to Sarah yet. You keep on having great questions. Um, please keep them coming. I'm just joking. But I had a question about just a bit of your research and the worlds that you paint in here because of
Yeah.
I mean, there's some cult sort of
Mm.
behavior.
Yeah.
There's this wellness sort of cult as well, and then drug
Yeah.
trials and this idea of longevity. And, this is a really interesting place in the book. And
Yeah.
just wanted to know, why is that an interest of yours? Was it an interest? How did it land into the book? And what did you know about it? How did you read all that stuff about it?
Yeah, I think so. In in Body of Lies, the fourth book, there's sort of these two intersecting plots, I guess, that are, yeah, one, as Ben said, is kind of got a bit of a cult sort of tail to it, and the other one is very much around the science world, the idea of medicine slash wellness, and how they start to kind of blur together. And
Mhm.
also, I guess, a little bit around aged care and how that's becoming such a massive sort of industry. And just, I
Yeah.
think anytime where wellness starts crossing into commercial gain, it's a bit fraught because the two things are sort of, they can coexist, but they're also a bit at odds. I find that all quite interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes in my work, we advertise. I mean, I'm very lucky in advertising. It's sort of like you get to work on different things all the time. So the, banking industry, it might be pharmaceutical, it might be chocolate bars, it could be government. Like it's pretty broad, and you do get to learn lots of little bits and pieces about lots of different things. So it's great from kind of a curiosity perspective. Um, I don't know though. I think with ideas, you just sort of something feels like it's tugging at you and it sort of suddenly seems like you see it everywhere. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
started to think about cults as being, traditional old fashioned cults were all very much around kind of control and power and the belief system and whatnot. And then really a lot of those modern industries I think are kind of the same, but they're
Mm.
just disguised in sort of a much more professional, organized, acceptable way. And the more I started, like I listened to a couple of podcasts from some of these, guys in kind of tech world that want to live forever and the
Yeah.
crazy like stuff that they're doing about that. It like for me, it seems not really worth it. Like their life on Earth is so compromised that I don't really know what they're gaining from wanting to live forever in such a way that they're kind of not doing anything very
Mhm.
exciting in their actual world. But
Beyond living
just really
forever.
interesting. Yeah, and I think it becomes like an addiction, I suppose. Like they're obsessed with themselves, their health, the
Yeah.
sort of like cheating like death. Um, so yeah, I don't know. I just started. It's not like I ever go, oh, I'm going to write a book that is about this and explores these themes and ticks off these kind of areas. It's more like it just starts to sort of swim around in the same sort of little soup of ideas. And then I'm like, oh, I'm feeling like there's something around this that's really interesting. And there's something kind of over here that I like. And
Mhm.
I know I've heard other people say this, but it's kind of not until you've written the book, then you step back and you go, oh, I was clearly really interested in themes around that.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
didn't know it at the time, really.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it's subconscious or sort of just that you're writing to figure out what you think about it or what you're like, just what you're curious about, maybe is more accurate. But I think there was something on my mind. Maybe it was a bit of a post COVID thing as well,
Yeah.
where I
Yeah.
feel like science suddenly became this big thing that everyone was interested in. I mean, when has science ever been on the front page of the paper before? It just isn't normally.
Good
And
point.
suddenly we all had an opinion on
Yeah.
medicines and vaccines and treatments and whatever. And
Everyone became
of
expert.
course, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, just sort of I guess started kind of observing that world a bit more and thinking about it, and that kind of worked well in the landscape of the book that I was writing, and did some research and then just made it all hopefully work together.
I think you absolutely nailed it. And you did paint those worlds, I think, really effectively. It was a really interesting, I guess you'd call it a setting or just, what's going on and motivating a bunch of the story that's happening. It's very, very interesting. Um,
Yeah.
I want to come back to Denise's question in just a second. I had one more question about the book. I think we've asked maybe two about the actual novel.
That's all
Fairly in
right.
its time, amazingly. But there's a particular sequence I just really, really loved. And it was a pretty scary little moment where Gemma was attacked in her home and she
Mm,
was incapacitated and then she was sort of waking up woozy, but she had two young children in her care when that happened.
mm.
And I just wanted to ask you about capturing that scene and that terror and that, I guess the discombobulation of the wooziness of coming back to. How did you go about
Yeah.
tackling that scene and achieving that?
Yeah, I think it's just really about imagining what that would be like. I mean, I've never experienced that, fortunately,
Hmm.
or anything like that. But I think when you're writing, sometimes I just write and sort of almost don't think. and then obviously you do have to go back and you edit, so you might tweak things and whatever, but you sort of then read it quite fresh and make sure that
Yeah.
what you've written has actually worked and has all the right emotions in it. I think that part of the book was a bit more experimental because, it was short little bursts of kind of her consciousness, and there was a lot going on kind of viscerally for her, but she didn't know very much. And because all the Gemma books are in first person, if she doesn't know what's going on, then you don't really know what's going on. So you're right there with her, which I guess hopefully makes it, more intense from an experience perspective.
Yeah.
But I often think with thrillers or suspense books or whatever, especially if they're written in first person, one of the most terrifying things that can happen is when the character is not able to control what's going on and they're sort of at the mercy of the circumstances around them.
Yeah, it
I
is.
think if you add in, like, I mean, I do have children, but I feel like even if I didn't, the thought of having either your child or someone else's in your care and then you being rendered incapacitated, and then the guilt and the fear and the just the, like
Yeah.
the hope that you would have that it was all going to turn out okay is pretty like terrifying. So
Yeah.
I guess I'm just trying to capture that and
I think
make
you
it
did
feel
it.
real. Yeah. And you sort of picture it, I think, a bit like it's not quite like I really ever write and think about, movies or TV shows, or I don't paint a scene, I don't think particularly in my mind, but maybe with scenes like that, you do have to sort of think what's she thinking, what she's seeing, what she's hearing. It does go back to the five senses a little bit because that's kind of all you've got.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, it's fun to write that sort of stuff. I don't know that I'd ever be able to be an action like writer. Like I think,
No, no, it's just
I
it's
like it because there's less of them in my
yeah,
books, but
yeah.
yeah, like it's a good sort of test, I suppose, to sort of make sure that you can capture those emotions in that
Yeah.
moment.
It's funny to hear you describe it as fun when I mean you can see Megan.
You're sorry. I mean, obviously terrible circumstance, but the right
It is
kind of
fun.
challenging as a writer, I guess. Yeah,
Yeah,
to
yeah.
sort of bring that emotion, and probably each one of my books has, I don't know, one or two scenes that are high emotion,
Mm.
um, high sort of octane, overwhelm or adrenaline. And I think they're really important moments in the books. Obviously, they're real spikes of emotion. So I think very important to kind of get right.
Yeah,
And
for sure.
yeah, that's just I guess what you're trying to do is get it right. Yeah.
Yeah, get it right. And
Mm.
I think you did it because it was, yeah, like I say, I was pretty terrified of it. And yeah, the idea of having a kid in your care and then not being able to help them when someone aggressive is nearby, it was just, yeah.
Yeah.
But
Not good.
I can see what you mean when you say that it's fun because it's a challenge. It's what we look for, right? You want to do that thing. You want to evoke
Yeah.
fear or just some response.
Yeah.
We had a question from Denise I thought was a good one, and it's maybe where we'll end up finishing up unless we have some new quick questions. But what are you actually reading at the moment, Sarah? What are you focusing on? We're here for Together We Read. What are you reading at the moment? And do you read a particular genre more than others or just sort of everywhere?
I read pretty broadly, I think. I do now very, very fortunate get sent quite a lot of crime thrillers to read.
Yeah.
So I probably read more crime thrillers than other types of books just because of that. But yeah, I'm pretty open to reading anything. I sort of enjoy reading and sort of, I guess, unpacking why something's working for me or not working for me. Yes, it is very lucky. I know makes me sound like a real like jerk saying, "Oh, I just get sent books." Not all the time, just sometimes. Um, but I recently read "The God of the Woods" by Liz Moore,
I don't know that.
which is yeah, it's an American book. It was on Barack Obama's reading list for the summer.
Of course,
Just
it's a
to
big
name drop a
one.
little bit.
I was
And
not a
I've never read her before. Yeah, I'd never heard of her before, never read her before. I heard them talking about this book on the New York Times podcast for books, and I kind of thought, oh, sounds interesting. And I loved it. Like it was a bit of a slow burn. I kind of probably the first like few chapters I was like, I'm not sure about this. Like it just feels a bit it's about a summer camp in America and a kid goes missing. And I mean, I'm not American. I don't haven't had that summer camp experience. I was a bit like, I'm not sure if this is right for me. Absolutely hooked. Amazing, really rewarding payoff. Like really cool, like a mystery, sort of a thriller, kind of a procedural, very creepy, very clever, really good.
Sounds
Yeah,
cool. All
yeah,
right.
really cool. Oh, there's my cat. Sorry.
Um, well, that's nearly all we have time for, Sarah. Is there anything on the horizon for you specifically that you can talk about that we can expect? Because we'd love to have you back to talk about our future book.
Oh, well, that sounds so nice. I need to finish the book that I'm writing, and I have to
Okay.
hand it in roughly February, and it's a sequel to The Housemate. I've read, I'm sorry, I've written about half of it. So I got a fair bit of work to do between now and and February, but it's going to be fine.
Yeah, yeah, you'll get there.
Yeah,
As always, you like
yeah,
deadlines,
we'll
right?
just
Working to deadlines.
yeah, it'll be good. Somehow it'll figure itself out.
Oh, well, I have to go back because yeah, I said to you, I haven't read The House, man. I have to go back and read that so I can catch up.
Yeah. What about you? Are you working on a book at the moment?
I'm working on
Am
a
I allowed to ask you a question? Yeah.
Of course, of course. I am
Yeah.
working on a book. I'm really enjoying it. I'm stepping a little bit away from crime and thrilling
Oh,
things.
cool.
Yeah, it's a bit of a um it's sort of writing about the world of music from when I was when I was a younger man. I played music in Melbourne and um
Yeah.
in a band, and I just don't know whether I've ever really felt that I've really read a book that captured how special that was to me. So it's about that, I guess. Yeah, I'm enjoying writing it.
Oh, that sounds great. How cool. I like the idea of, I mean, I don't know if I have another kind of style of book in me, but I do love the idea of people, writing against genre and doing something new. That's cool.
Yeah. Well, I don't know whether I've ever really sat comfortably in the crime thing. I've always felt like a bit of an interloper, just sort of in this on the sides of it, because I don't know. I never think about like Mark talks about with Wimmera, right? Like it's not
Yeah.
he didn't think of it as a crime novel, it just had crime in it. That's how I sort of think, I think too.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah. I mean, so much is crime adjacent really these days too.
Exactly.
Like sometimes I read, these sort of very high in literary sort of novels and they've got crimes in them. So it's like, well, they're
Yeah,
probably
yeah.
crimes as well. So I don't know. It's tricky.
It is.
I thanks to everybody that answered the question about the book I recommended. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
very helpful. It's great.
I want to say thanks to all of you in the audience. You've made, I think, Sarah feel really, really welcome. And as always, Ben's Book Club members are the best people in the whole world. I'll say that until we stop, which we won't. We're not stopping. If you check out the link in the chat for people who are new here, you can go and join up and join Ben's Book Club. We do feature an Australian author every month. And next month's, I actually, normally I grab the book and I have it here to show you what we're reading next. I forgot to do it. We're reading the new Petronella McGovern book, and we
Oh,
are.
I've read that. It's
It's
very
good,
good.
right? I think you're on the
Yeah.
cover. Are you on the cover for?
I am. Yeah, she kept telling me that I was on tour with her because she kept having my name at the top of all of her promo material. But yes, The Liars. It's no, the what is it? The Last Trace?
The Last Trace? Yeah,
Last Trace. It's really good. Yeah, I
it's
really liked
awesome.
it.
I'm enjoying it. It's got cult stuff in there too. So
Yeah,
similar
I
stuff.
know. They're everywhere. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Um, but yeah, I'm reading it now. I'm really enjoying it. So if you want to join up, we are actually meeting earlier this month though. We're actually meeting on the 16th, which if you can believe it is less than 2 weeks away. It's on a Monday night. So in less than 2 weeks, we will be meeting for the last trace to talk with Petronella, which I'm really excited about. Which is funny, Sarah. We've done this one after August, which we're normally at the end of August, and then we're doing
Yeah.
it early. So it's smooshed it together to a
Oh,
two
well,
a 2 week turnaround. So hopefully we'll see
have
you
to
guys.
read quick.
Yeah, you've got time to listen to the audiobook. But yeah, so The Last Trace by Petronella McGovern. Hopefully we can see you guys all there to support Petronella. She's an amazing author. We had her on last year too for The Liars. She's really, really cool person to talk to. But yeah, that's again, thank you, Sarah, for being a part of Ben's Book Club. And I want to say thank you to all of you guys in the chat. Um, yeah, this is really
Yeah,
fun. And
thanks.
yeah,
It's
thanks,
great.
thanks for such a good night, Sarah. I think it's, yeah, you're really fun to talk to. We should do this more often.
Oh, so Tabby says to say goodbye as well. Tabby's just, yeah, she's sitting right here next to me on the desk. But no, thanks everybody. Everyone's been absolutely lovely, and Ben, of course, thanks to you. You're always so great to chat to as well.
Yeah, nice. All right. We'll hopefully talk soon, but yeah, and let me know how you get on with Scrivener, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. I'll keep you posted.
No pressure. No pressure.
Thanks,
All
thanks
right.
everyone.
Thanks,
Bye.
guys. Have a great night. See
Bye.
you next time. Bye.
See ya. See ya.